Welcome to the Shunned podcast, where we expose religions that use shunning as a tool to control people. Some quick business before we get started. As you know by now, I offer one-on-one coaching to help people recover from life in these high control groups. I work to help people grieve the past, find themselves, and then find a life that they actually want, not just the one they were given. I'm actually offering something special for the month of February as a trial. So if you want to work with me, now would be a good time. I'm actually offering pay what you want pricing. That's not something you see very often, but I want to work with more people. I want to try to help more people. So, when you look at it, traditional therapy locally is usually, $100 plus per session. Online therapy is usually $80 or more. I typically charge $50 for coaching, which most people find reasonable. But this month, I'm actually letting you decide the price. So the minimum is actually $20, but you decide from there. And by doing so, I'm hoping that I can help more people. So if you're feeling unhappy or stuck, send me an email at shunnedpodcast@gmail.com or reach out through any of the websites that I have, whether it's shunnedpodcast.com, xjwhelp.com, or whatever. And let's start working together. We already lost so much time in these groups. You can certainly do some healing alone, of course. But, when we work together on things, we can often heal a lot faster. And, we can also process things together, challenge perspectives, get new tools, find ways of different ways of looking at things, find acceptance, kind of go through this grieving process together. And in the end, more and more people have been reaching out for help, and seeing people that I work with actually start to find their voice, to make big changes in their lives, to be who they've wanted to be, or to just be proud of who they are. That's the best feeling in the world. Speaking of seeing people become who they are, or be able to speak to who they've been, today we actually have another brave person that's reached out to tell their story as part of the process of healing. It can be very cathartic to share your story with other people, to feel seen, heard, validated. So let's go on a journey with today's guest. As you listen, look for the lessons, look for the ways that maybe your story relates, and maybe you can learn about what has worked for this person, or maybe what hasn't. Maybe it's something that you can pull into your own life. If you were never involved in these groups, I get emails from people that just listen because they find these stories interesting or they find them inspiring. So please help spread the word. These aren't just cult stories. These are human stories. So many of the things that were experienced by the guests of this show are found in other areas of life. So share these episodes and let's help shine a light on the human experience. What's really going on in this world? You never know who it might help. So without further ado, let's go ahead and meet today's guest.
So my name is Cassandra. I was a Jehovah's Witness. I am 31 years old and I am shunned.
All right, Cassandra. So how did you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
I was born in. So I guess my earliest memory, I was about 3 years old. So I guess I can count it from there, 3 years on.
Mm-hmm.
And my family, I guess I'm the fourth generation. So my parents, and their parents were all witnesses.
Oh, wow. So you've got that, what do they call it? The quotes, spiritual heritage or whatever,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So yours does go back. So do you know what started it in your family? Has there ever been any discussions about, how it kicked off as far as your family goes?
I'm sure that they talked about it a little bit, but I don't really remember. I remember seeing pictures of my great-grandparents out on bikes with like backpacks or whatever preaching,
wow.
But I don't really remember how they became witnesses. No.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting sometimes to find that out, but it's definitely not something that people know when it goes back that many generations. So you being born in, what was the worldview that the religion gave you as you were growing up?
So the way I viewed the world was that everyone was immoral people. They're sluts and slept with anything that walked. Everybody was drunkard, did drugs, all that good stuff. So I had a very skewed view. That's what I would call it.
Yeah. Makes you think of some of those pictures or artist illustrations that they'd have like in the Live Forever book or the Knowledge book or whatever the recent book is, that they would study with people out of. And it always showed the the loose women and the people, the drunkenness and all those things. That's kind of how we were led to believe everybody was.
Yep, that was my view.
Yeah. So, growing up, seeing the world that way kind of makes you nervous or scared of the world. So, what about the world that you lived in? How was that? How was your little world as a child growing up at home? What was your home life like?
So my home life, I always thought that my life was pretty normal.
Hmm.
I've learned since then that it wasn't so normal, but I think earlier I said my earliest memory was I was about 3 years old, and my mom had a part on the meeting, and she wanted us to paint pictures of what we thought a paradise life would look like. And I was 3, so I painted like scribbles, and it looked like a brown mess, like it was really, really hideous. And she went up on stage and showed it to everybody, but you could see that she was really embarrassed because she asked me to see what paradise would look like, but I just made this ugly mess. And it's like they expected something grand out of a 3-year-old.
Oh, wow.
And that embarrassment, like, to me, that's what my home life was like. I felt like I was an embarrassment for most of my life.
Wow, that's horrible. That's a really rough start. Be 3 years old, and it seems like a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses have very unrealistically high expectations of children. Whether it's that a child should be able to sit for 2 hours at a meeting without making a peep, or that you would be able to somehow envision paradise. Aside from that incident, were there others that made you feel that way as well, where you felt like you were an embarrassment growing up?
Um, I honestly have always felt like an embarrassment, so I don't know if who all made me feel that way, but
Yeah.
I've just always felt that way. But I know that at the Kingdom Hall, our family wasn't very liked. Um, we were kind of, I don't even know the right word for that, pariah maybe. So
Wow.
if we said my parents would like to sit like anywhere in the Kingdom Hall, how some people have like their spot they'd like to sit,
Oh, yeah.
but my parents would sit like they'd change it up every time. So 3 days a week we'd sit in a different spot. Well, if my parents sat on one side of the Kingdom Hall, everyone else would try to sit on the other. And if they'd switch it up and sit on the other, then everybody else would it was like magnets, the
Wow.
opposite magnets. Everybody would
Yeah,
together.
repelling the other people.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you know why? Do you have any idea why your family was looked at that way? I mean,
My gosh, I have no idea. I remember my grandpa was an elder, and he seemed really well liked, but one day just I don't know, everybody hated us, and I have no idea why.
wow, that's tough too. You're obviously in a family where you kind of feel, I guess, a level of shame, or like an embarrassment. And then you're at the meetings, and this should be where you're with your quote brothers and sisters who are supposed to love you and accept you, and they're literally moving away. And that's just
Yeah.
that's there's no way to treat people, but you can see where that would even reinforce a level of embarrassment. um so how did you, being in the family that you were, it sounds like your parents had pretty high expectations. um what Were you all the family that did all the family worship nights and prepared for all the meetings and were really on top of things?
So that's kind of funny because my dad he tried really hard to be like the spiritual head. I see
Hmm.
that in quotations. He tried really hard, but I have 2 older brothers and we were very rambunctious. So my oldest brother, he hated sitting still. He had like ADD, I guess, and he would fight my dad at every turn. He hated doing family worship. And my middle brother, he's I'm the youngest. So my middle brother, he was like really shy and didn't want to read out loud in front of anyone, so he would fight it. And I was like really loved to read and loved to learn, so I was like gung ho. I really wanted to do the family worship stuff, but my brothers would make it so difficult that my dad would end up getting frustrated. I think we did maybe 2 weeks in a row at some point in my life, but we
Yeah.
normally skip.
Yeah, a lot of families struggle to get that going. Or it just ends up becoming a session to yell at the kids.
Exactly.
So, were you then out in service a lot on the weekends and such? Did you find any enjoyment in that, or in uh, find any friends in doing that?
Um, when I was little, I really enjoyed going out preaching because it was, I don't know, it was like really cute. Nobody says anything bad if you're a little bitty child, a
Yeah.
cute little kid coming up with a little brochure or something, be like, here, read this. It talks about Jesus. And they're all like, oh, she's so cute. But after a while, I started to hate it, and I made excuses to not want to go. And I'd be like, I don't feel good today, like the normal little kid stuff to try getting out of things. I would try to pull that crap. It didn't really work all the time, but yeah, I hated it
It was
growing.
worth
Like
a
whenever I
try.
was little,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's always worth a try. See if it pans out. So you mentioned your family kind of being a pariah. Did that mean, did you have many friends in the congregation? Were you accepted as the kid, maybe?
You would like to, that would be nice, but no.
No.
Um, I let me see. So we lived in a kind of a
Hmm.
rural area. Our Kingdom Hall, I think we had about 50, 60 publishers maybe. So we were pretty small, and I was the only girl my age.
Mm.
There were a few boys my brother's ages, but not my age. So I didn't have any friends in the Kingdom Hall, and we didn't live close to any other Kingdom Halls, and we never visited any other Kingdom Halls. So basically, what we had in our hall was it. So I had nobody my age and mainly a bunch of older people, and they all hated us. So no, I didn't have any friends, and wasn't very fun there.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds pretty miserable. There's a very pretty small congregation, and in such a small congregation, it really makes you wonder, what happened back in the day that resulted in your family being so ostracized. I mean, it could be something as simple as, because Jehovah's Witnesses, for as much as they talk about forgiveness and stuff, they're very judgmental and they really hold on to grudges. And
Yeah, for sure. They're very, very judgmental, especially where I grew up at.
yeah. Yeah. I'm just wondering, do you feel, or do you think that maybe it being more rural led people to being more judgmental?
Um, Possibly. I feel like they're kind of stuck in the old ways.
Yeah.
Whenever we would visit people in Louisville, whenever I got older,
Hmm.
it was like a different world visiting them because their parents weren't nearly as strict as mine were, and they could wear more skimpy clothing and they could talk differently. It was like I said, another world visiting Louisville congregations later.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm from the area. So, I've visited some of the rural congregations in Kentucky. And yeah, one of the reasons I asked that question was because, we do live in the Bible Belt. And so people are naturally more conservative anyway, I think, than a lot of places. Especially once you get outside the city, it becomes a lot more that way. And when people haven't been exposed to anything else, they tend to become even more judgmental, which is tough because Jehovah's Witnesses are already pretty judgmental. That makes it even more rough.
Yep.
So, did you find any outlet in school? How was school for you growing up?
Oh Lord. Um, so school, I was from kindergarten till fifth grade. I was in public school, and
Hmm.
then sixth grade I went into homeschool, which I know is a theme among Jehovah's Witnesses as well. And I really enjoyed school as far as getting to be around people my age, but I was very socially awkward because of not being around people outside of school.
Yeah.
So I was really odd. People didn't really like me very much. I was really odd, and honestly, I still am kind of odd and don't socialize very well to this day. And, being 31 years old, that's kind of sad. But yeah, school was, you know, okay, here's a story. Whenever I was in kindergarten, um, I knew that birthdays were bad, they're bad.
Yeah.
We're allowed to participate in anything, but they had cupcakes and they had like a little clown thing on top. And I really wanted a cupcake. And so I was like, sure, I'll have a cupcake. My family came to pick me up that day for some reason from school, and I had icing all over my face because, I was a little kid. And my brother pointed at me, goes, "She celebrated a birthday." And it wasn't pretty. I got grounded for like a really long time. And let's just say I never ever had a cupcake. I actually hate cupcakes to this day.
Wow.
But yeah, that was basically school. If I know after that, if ever there was a birthday or a Christmas party, any kind of parties like that, I would have to go to the library and sit there and act like a librarian and put books back on the shelves and all that kind of stuff.
That sounds familiar. I remember doing
Yeah.
that.
And I remember I got kind of upset because there were a couple of kids that were, I think their parents were studying with the Witnesses and they went to the same school as me. And I remember that they got to hang out in the parties and I was like, well, that's not fair. I want to be able to hang out at the parties too. But since they were just studying, they were allowed to do those things. And yeah.
Yeah. Because it wasn't official yet. So,
Right.
When the shift happened and you went to homeschool, were you happy about that maybe because it got you away from some of the awkwardness or something that you weren't really enjoying? Or, how was that transition for you?
I was so excited to go to homeschool. I thought that it was going to be great and I was going to just stay at home all day and do nothing and be lazy because I was like pretty lazy. But then I found out very quickly how awful it was going to be. I think let me see, a couple of months after I went into homeschool, I got baptized because I don't remember why. Oh, I know. This is fun. So a friend of mine, I had met a girl in Louisville and she was like wanting to date my brother or something. So we became friends and she said she was going to get baptized that summer. And so I was like, hey, I'll get baptized with you. And there was no thought behind it other than my friend is getting baptized. So I'm going to do it too. So she's not alone.
Yeah.
And
And at that point, I'm sure having a friend meant so much to you, you would have done anything.
yeah. And it turns out that I got baptized alone. She didn't get baptized. So,
Oh,
so
no.
yay.
Wow, you got stood up at baptism.
I
That's
did, and it was lovely.
wow.
But yeah, I started, did that, and I started going out in service all the time, and I think I became a regular auxiliary pioneer, is what they call it. So I had to get like 50 hours of
Yeah.
preaching every month.
So you would have been, I mean, so you're talking about you got baptized at the beginning of 6th grade. So what's that? Like 11 years old,
I was
something like that?
I was 12.
12? Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. And so, it does from what you're saying already, I know earlier you kind of talked about how you still have a difficulty socializing sometimes or not feeling awkward at 31. But you look at something like this and you're really just set up for failure, because you're in a family that is in a very closed little world and you're ostracized even in that world and then not allowed to be friends with anybody outside that world. So, a lot of us really struggle to make friends and to not feel like we're different when we leave. Obviously, you've got, everybody has their own level of that. But it's very difficult because we were just set up for failure. We weren't given tools to make friends. We weren't, at best, even those of us who had friends had them because they were automatic because we were at the same Kingdom Hall.
Yep.
These were just skills that normal people learned that we didn't. So a lot of people really struggle with that. And then, here you are, you finally you have a friend and you think you're going to get baptized together and she pulls that stunt. Do you know, I'm just curious, was she not approved to get baptized or did she just kind of go back on it all?
I don't think she was approved, and
Ah,
that makes me laugh a little bit because I don't know what in the hell they were thinking approving me because, for those of the that are listening that like they don't know anything about witnesses, you have to go through questions and like a couple chapters of this book you have these questions and they're pretty deep questions I would think for a 12-year-old. And I had no clue on any of these answers for at least like half of them. I was like just talking out my ass, I had no idea what I was saying. And I remember one of them in particular, which was like they were asking about idolatry, and then another one was about adultery. I didn't know the difference between idolatry and adultery,
right,
right?
right.
So why in the world would they say, yeah, she's ready to get baptized? Like,
Because
what were
Holy
they?
Spirit led them to.
Right.
It's, they like to believe the Holy Spirit's directing this. No, as long as those three guys agree that, or if nothing else, maybe it's actually a good, maybe you're a good BSer and you did a really
Which
good
I'm
job.
totally not.
But no, it just sounds, if you've got three guys there and they want to let you get baptized, they'll let you get baptized. And if, there are other people who've been on the podcast who had to try multiple times to get baptized and who really wanted it just because, there was a grudge or something like that. So you just never know, it just luck of the draw sometimes, who's going to let you through and who's not. And I'm sure it looked good for them to have a young person your age getting baptized. It looks good on the congregation. Were you praised a lot for that?
My mother was very excited, which is so funny because she never once did they ever push me to get baptized or ever talk about that. Um, but then as soon as out of the blue, I was like, hey, let me get baptized. They're like, oh, we're so proud of her. She's doing such a great job. And I was like, I didn't understand how she was so fake about being so excited. I don't
Yeah.
know if that even makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know what's genuine and what's not when you're that age, and kids are pretty good at detecting that stuff. Especially from parents because you're around and you know how they're treating you all the time. Um, how did so the day of baptism, a lot of times that's a big day for a kid because it's the one time you get celebrated. It's the one time, or you might get celebrated. I didn't, but some people do. It's the one time you have a chance to get celebrated. You might get, some people actually, they'll go out to eat after the convention, or you might get gifts or a Bible with your name on it or something. Was it celebrated for you at all? Did you feel special in any way?
We went out to eat afterward, so that was fun, and I got to pick the restaurant, which never happened. Um, I chose Chinese food, which I really love Chinese food, so we got to Chinese buffet with a Mongolian grill, and it was really delicious. So yeah, it was pretty special. I got to do that. I didn't get any gifts or anything like that, but the going out to eat thing was really nice.
Yeah. Did you go out just as a family, or were you able to bring anybody else? Did anybody come with you? Friends of yours or friends of the family from the convention?
If friends were there, I don't remember anyone,
Yeah.
but I believe it was just my brothers, my mom and dad, grandparents, and aunt and uncle, I think.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So, at least, and you did have some of those extended family who were also in the religion as well. Um, so how did things progress for you? As you said you got baptized at 12, basically. As you're going into your teenage years, um, you talked about how you started auxiliary pioneering or maybe even regular auxiliary. Um, what was the trajectory of your teenage years?
Oh, trajectory. So, yeah, I started the auxiliary pioneering, and I guess something I hadn't mentioned before is I've always had really bad anxiety and depression, even as like a child.
Hmm.
So I remember my first like panic attack. I was like 7 years old,
Wow.
and I think I didn't even realize all this until I've been going to therapy, and so my therapist has really helped me a lot to realize some things. But like at 7, it like a whole bunch of crap happened. So my mom had been molested as a young person, and she told me all about it whenever I was 7. It was by a family member, so I was scared to go anywhere with my dad. I was scared to go anywhere with my uncles. Uh, I was terrified of men for most of my life. So going into my teenage years, still terrified of men,
Hmm.
um, terrified of being alone. We'd go to Walmart and I'd have panic attacks, like full meltdowns in the middle of Walmart because my mom would just like walk away and she'd told me all these stories about how if we go out places, people just waiting to steal you and do horrible things to you because this world is full of horrible people. So we'd go out places and I was like preteen, teenager and be like freaking out thinking that I was about to get stolen, which is
Wow.
silly, but
Yeah, that's kind of the
uh,
definition of a mind fuck there, you know? I mean, she really sets you up in a very bad way to be afraid of everybody. I mean, not just the religion itself, makes people afraid anyway. You know, you're all the imagery that you're seeing, the messages that you're seeing, but you know, your mom telling you that at 7, that's horrible boundaries. Um, just completely improper to have that conversation with a 7-year-old. I mean, there's a
yeah.
proper conversation to have with a child about their boundaries, their personal boundaries, and where they should be. But that's not it. That's not it at all.
Yeah, I have a 10-year-old and a 3-year-old and there's no way in hell I would ever
Yeah.
tell them those kind of things. Like I don't know what they're thinking, but um
Needed somebody to talk to,
yeah.
probably. No, I'm just
So
saying, so you probably had her own trauma and wasn't dealing with it or talking to appropriate people, so she picked an inappropriate person.
oh yeah, definitely. And I remember that she ended up being hospitalized for it later.
Yeah.
And I like blocked the whole thing out. But yeah, she didn't deal with it very well and she still, as far as I know, has issues with it too to this day. So that's really sucky.
It is. It's sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, sad
But
that those things stick with you. So
mhm.
you were saying that you were having these panic attacks anyway.
Yeah, and I didn't even realize that's what it was,
Yeah.
that I was having these panic attacks, whatever. And anytime I remember my aunt noticed it one day and she was like, "Is she okay? She's acting really funny." And my mom's like, "No, she's fine. She just does this. It's no big deal." But really, I was like not doing so well and I probably needed to be getting help or whatever. But she's
Yeah.
like, "No, it's fine. She's fine. Don't worry about it." I'm like, "Oh, thanks, mom."
Yeah.
Um,
Everything's fine, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything was fine.
Signs of denial.
So, teenage years, my brothers, they were older than me, so they were had their licenses and had their girlfriends in Louisville, so we'd all go hang out, and I got to meet new people that way. Um, I think whenever I was probably about 14, 13 or 14, I was hanging out with my cousin in Louisville a lot. She went to the Outer Loop congregation, I think, or maybe it was Fern Creek congregation,
Hmm.
and I was hanging out with her. I was homeschooled, so I had plenty of time on my hands. And she was homeschooled as well. So I was hanging out with her and um, being scared of people and men or whatever in my life. You'd think I'd be a little bit smarter than I was, but I wasn't. So I was hanging out with my cousin, and we were all just having a good old time riding bikes and playing in the woods. And at one point, my cousin was there, and he's like, "Hey, let's go play in the woods." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And it was just the two of us. And um, sorry if this gets TMI or whatever. So we were like out there in the woods, and he's like, "Don't tell anybody. Let's hide from them." And I was like, "Okay."
Hmm.
And I was stupid. So like I'm like giggling and looking around like, "Oh, they haven't found us yet." And I look behind me, and my cousin's like standing there with this thing whipped out and had a condom on, and I was like, "Holy crap! What is he doing?" And of
Yeah.
course, I was like 14 and sheltered, so I had no idea what it even was. And thankfully, nothing happened. I was like being all acting. I was feeling weird, so I started screaming for my cousin, and she finally came over then and started punching him and smacking him upside the head. So that was fun. But
Wow. I mean, that's how old was he at the time?
I think he was like 17.
I was gonna say that's yeah, somebody who's doing that and who takes you in the woods and all that. Probably not the first time.
Yeah, he's been accused of stuff since then.
Yeah.
So, but of
Yeah.
course he's still a witness, and you know, got all his privileges, all that stuff. You know
Sure.
how that goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of those unfair things that happens a lot of times. And I also want to say, I know I understand feeling that way, but you weren't stupid. You were just a kid, and you were probably caught up in just having fun, man. Like really, you shouldn't be even thinking about that as a 14-year-old girl playing. Probably one of the few times you got to play, and just playing with your cousins and having fun. Who's gonna think that's gonna happen? Um, yeah, it's just that's on him. That's not on you at all. um that's that's terrible. So where did things go from there? Did you tell anybody, or did it?
Well, since like I said, I didn't really realize what was going on, and
Yeah,
so I kind of forgot about it for a
gotcha.
while.
Yeah.
Uh, but I was, still really depressed and feeling like everybody hated me because our family was, hated and didn't have any friends. And um, I think I was probably 16 ish, 15 or 16, whenever I finally told my mom because I remembered. And of course, her first thing was to go talk to the elders at the Kingdom Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Oh, well, that's stupid. We'll look into it, but whatever. We don't really need to look into it, but we're just going to say we're going to look into it, you know?"
Mm-hmm.
I never looked into it. Whenever, again, around the same time, 15 or 16, I got I got so upset because I was what I was a pretty good kid. I tried really hard to be a good Jehovah's Witness, and I obeyed like all rules without question. Whereas, my brothers, my oldest brother especially, he was questioned everything. He ended up getting disfellowshipped pretty young, um, or shunned, whatever. And like, I didn't question anything. My brother got disfellowshipped. I stopped talking to him.
Mm-hmm.
And but I was pretty depressed and everything. When I was 15 or 16, I tried to kill myself,
Mm.
and listened to all the hard rock music and the emo, and started wearing black all the time, and that made everybody be like, she's a bad person, she's a bad kid, she's wearing black. And
Yeah,
uh,
you're demonic or something.
yeah, they're like, she's a demon worshiper, she's wearing black fingernail polish, oh my god.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was like the more I tried to be a good person or a good kid and follow the rules, it's like the more everyone picked at me and hated me. So I just yeah, my parents had it turned out that a few elders had been telling my dad that he needed to get on me because I was a bad kid, and telling him that he needed to straighten me out or whatever. And he from his story, he told me that he actually defended me, which is pretty nice because they're not really the type to defend defend me or whatever. So um, and I just now lost where I was going with that. Sorry.
Well, that's okay. I was going to ask you, I mean, so you're 15, 16 years old, and you're so low mentally and emotionally that you attempt suicide. Does anyone, what is the reaction to that? Um, Obviously unsuccessful attempt. What was the reaction from your family? Were they, and people around you? Was it one of shaming you for doing that, or was it one of love and compassion, and did anyone try to get you help?
So first I have to tell you the way I tried was I was trying to drown myself, which it didn't work. My mom's reaction was to not let me near the pool anymore, and that was that.
Okay. All
So,
right.
uh, yeah. So no, it wasn't very loving, or
Yeah.
I feel like in hindsight, I was just trying to get help. It was a cry for help,
Sure.
but it obviously didn't work. So,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sounds like a cry for help. And it's tough when you grow up in an emotional desert, and all you want, you're looking for is for somebody to help you, and they just don't have anything to give you, which is what it sounds like. It just doesn't sound like they had anything really to offer much, did they?
No, and it's like I knew that I was needy, and like I know I'm like super needy because I felt like I just needed some more attention and I needed to feel more love from my parents, and so I would try to get that. And I remember my mom she'd get mad at me because she'd be like, you think we don't dote on you all the time, and we're not showing you enough affection, and we of course we love you, just basically we love you, but get out of our faces and stop wanting so much from us because you're not going to get it. That's how I took it, anyways.
Yeah, which isn't which is like, that doesn't make you needy. That makes them negligent. you know, that's not you just being some, like, yeah, kids have needs. Your children, when you choose to have them, they have needs, and you have to try to be there for them. Unfortunately, you can understand that a parent might lack certain tools, and might be in a position where they don't have a lot to give, but they should be trying to get help so that they have more to give. Just have more for themselves, and also more to give to their children. It's a growth process, and yeah, I hate it when people just label kids, or kids feel like they're labeled needy, because typically that comes because their needs aren't being met. That's why the kid is like that in the first place, because they're being neglected. So yeah, I hate to see that, because here you're crying out for help with probably the way you're dressing and stuff is a cry, to some extent, to be different, to be noticed, because you need help. And that's all you're doing, is raising your hand asking for help, and nobody is seeing that, unfortunately.
Yeah, as far as asking for help thing, I think my mom made this comment, and I think it fits pretty well. Whenever I had my own children, I was in the hospital with them right after giving birth, or whatever, and I was like, "Mom, can you stay with me? I'm really exhausted. Like, I really need some help." She's like, "Nobody stayed with me in the hospital whenever I had you. Why would I stay for you?" Right. I think that's pretty much it's like, I didn't get the attention I needed. Why would I give you the attention you need?
Well, I'll be honest. I mean, not that I was that bad, but it sounds like she just lacks empathy. Doesn't know how to give empathy at all. I struggled with that for a long time too. Nobody ever, I grew up in an emotional desert myself. My parents didn't offer me anything emotionally. There was no such thing as empathy. They didn't care how I thought or felt about anything. So I just didn't even understand why I would even try to care how anybody else felt or thought about anything. I had never seen it before. So I didn't know how to do it. But of course, once I saw that there was this thing, I was on board with it. It's sad though that it sounds like, yeah, I mean, a statement like that is just that kind of really sets the emotional tone, doesn't it, for probably a lot of your life.
Yep.
So where do you go after 15, 16, the attempt, as you're getting closer to 18, the big moment where everyone is officially a quote adult, magically by definition of an age, what do you do, or where do you go, being homeschooled? Were you gonna just get a job, pioneer? What was it you wanted to do?
Well, I did what it seems like every witness girl does. I got married at
Yeah.
18.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I was having issues at home with my parents. I felt like they didn't care about me, blah blah blah. So I was like, it never once crossed my mind that, hey, I could probably get a roommate or get my own apartment or something similar to that. No, my idea was the only way out of this house is if I get married to somebody. So I started dating this guy I'd known since I was like 12, and everything was great for a little while. I think we dated, let's see, we started dating like October, November, and got engaged in January, February,
Mm-hmm.
got married in June.
Mm-hmm.
So less than 6 months we were married. So
I can't say anything. I think
oh,
we were
great,
4.
nice.
So I keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, but oh my gosh, it was it turns out that the guy I married, like he was a witness,
Hmm.
he was Jehovah's Witness, but he mm, he ended up being schizophrenic, bipolar, multiple personality disorder.
Mm. So he had some
Uh,
serious issues.
yeah, yeah, it wasn't very fun.
Yeah. And did those not start? Did, was there no evidence of those until you got married?
Right, and I think that that's probably why it went so quickly because he was in a manic phase, I guess. So he was like acting like he had enough money to take care of family, and he was super happy and working out. So he's acting like he was healthy. So I was like, "Hey, I found myself a catch."
Mm. But he
Yeah,
was just on the up. He was on the manic
yeah.
side, and then that usually, depending on the type, comes down at some point. So after you got married, is that when it kind of went the other way?
Oh yeah. I think he ended up getting shunned himself maybe 2 months after we got married.
Oh wow, really? Wow. So what was that like going through? I mean, first of all, that's all happening so fast. It's hard to even. You probably didn't even have time to really think about it. Any a lot of this in the moment, but you know, 2 months later, he's disfellowshipped and shunned. How does that impact you and your life with that happening?
Well, I went from I went from one my family who was hated by everyone and didn't have any socialization to getting married to somebody who got shunned, so nobody wanted to hang out with me.
Yeah.
So I went from one bad situation to another, and once even though I wasn't shunned at that point, my husband was, and so nobody wanted to invite me over because I would be a single, or they felt like they couldn't invite me without inviting my husband, and they obviously couldn't invite him. So it wasn't good. I guess I
Yeah.
can say that.
Yeah.
Um, and he was, with having all of his issues, he wasn't very nice. So whenever he was in manic, he was okay, but the other times he was emotionally abusive. Um, sorry, more TMI. He was kind of sexually abusive.
Hmm.
So we just did not have a good relationship, and him getting shunned like that so quickly after getting married was just the worst thing. And I guess I can honestly say I hated him with a passion after about honestly a couple weeks of being married. I hated him, and I regretted having married him in the first place.
Wow, and that's tough because as witnesses, you don't just get divorced.
Right?
Um,
Yeah. If you get married, it's for life, and the only way out is death or
mhm.
adultery. So
Yeah, and you're talking weeks into this, and everything seems to be falling apart. So, and man, I mean, if he's got the issues he does, and then he's shunned, does that just make him more depressed and low?
oh yeah, and he was also he was also a drug addict and an alcoholic. So he started drinking a lot more and did all the drugs. So that made him act even more, for lack of a better term, kind of crazy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It sounds like he was really flying off the handle. So how does this play out? How long do you all stay together, and um, how does this impact the rest of your life too, outside of the marriage?
So we stayed together for about 3.5 years,
Hmm.
and there were a couple of times. There was one time where I could have. had what they call grounds to divorce him because he was going out to strip clubs, and for some reason it counted as adultery, however he did things, whatever. So um, I had grounds, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to give him another chance, and I'm going to try to make this work.
Right.
So I didn't divorce him, which, if I would have taken that chance to divorce then I would have still had my family, and, I wouldn't have gotten shunned. But I decided to give him another chance. And then I think it lasted for another 2 months after that. And I was like, I can't handle this anymore. So I did the only thing that I was taught was allowed. So I went out and cheated on him.
Yep.
And then I came home and told him that I cheated on him, and I said, get out. So, so about 3.5 years we were there.
Well, you're definitely not alone there. I mean, if you've listened to the episodes, there's been a number of people who have, this is the way that you are given out of the relationship. So however that needs to happen, a lot of people, end up getting in other relationships quickly, sometimes even just to get out of the marriage, because it's just, they really do a number on people, just the way they view that relationship. And you're really just kind of caught in a trap if things aren't good. There's just not a lot of good ways out. It's kind of like being in a cult. This kind of hit me, like there's no good way out. Yeah, no good way out. So this is not gonna go well, as it ends for witnesses. So you got out of it. You cheated on him to get out of it. How did that play out? Did that get you shunned?
Oh yeah, and the way that it happened was, I guess somebody found it. I guess he told his mom or whatever, and she told the elders, and they called me in for a meeting, judicial meeting, whatever. And I came into the meeting and I said, basically, fuck all of you, fuck your religion, fuck your God. And for me to say all this to me, that's like kind of crazy, because I was a good person. I was a good Christian, and I felt like I was doing such a good job. It was like I said earlier, no matter what I did, it just wasn't good enough, and people would talk bad about me and spread rumors. Whenever I got married, I moved into this new congregation, and people that I'd known for a while, not closely, but I still knew them, and I thought that this is my fresh start. I'm going to have people that appreciate me or that see that I'm a good person. And that didn't happen. So I remember I turned 21, and I was still married at this time. I was turned 21, and I went out to get a margarita, my very first alcoholic beverage, I might add. I waited until I was 21 to drink.
Mm-hmm.
And my best friend and I, who was 12 years my senior, we went out to Tumbleweed or someplace like that and got $1 margarita. I don't know if you've ever had one of those, but they're really, really weak. So I had 2 of those, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And there just so happened to be another witness family that was sitting a couple tables over there, and they saw me having 2 margaritas. And so, oh my gosh, that's horrible. And so
they were counting your drinks?
Oh yeah. So they went back to the Kingdom Hall, and they told the elders, Cassandra was out getting drunk and acting crazy, and she needs to be spoken to. And so people are out there saying that I'm a drunkard now. And I was I just turned 21 and I got 2 margaritas. How is that being drunk?
Wow, that's so sad. And I can't speak for all other areas, but growing up in the Louisville area, there is a huge culture of gossip and telling on people, and watching each other, trying to one up one another. It's I remember I was a ministerial servant and a regular pioneer. I was 19 years old, and I would go out and service at other congregations, and I would find out people were talking they were talking mad shit about me. and I had never done anything. the stuff they were talking about me, it was crazy. Like, I was not doing any, I was very straight laced Jehovah's Witness. Like, I mean, I hadn't done anything. And come to find out, there were like all these old women in our congregation all these old sisters who were just, I guess they didn't have anything to do. And they just started talking amongst themselves and coming up with all this stuff. And then they would tell it to other congregations, and I would go out in service and I was hearing things about myself, or people were acting weird around me, and I never understood it. So it's sad that, whether this is endemic everywhere or in this area, that people have nothing better to do than to just sit around and run down their, quote, brothers and sisters in the congregation.
Yeah, that's how it was. And oh my gosh, it's like you'd think that, I thought that was just where I grew up, because we were rural and everybody was so strict over there. I thought that was just like a small town thing. But then I got out to Louisville and I was like, yes, it's going to be different. I'm going to have people that like me. And then I was like, nope, they hate you more here and they just want to bring you down. Great.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that kind of just gets to the culture, and it probably is widespread pretty much everywhere. I mean, I've talked to enough people at this point to know that it happens in a lot of places that way. And, even if you're in a big city, you're still in a small group of Jehovah's Witnesses. And,
yep.
This is...
And word travels.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, so you were, at that time, you were in good standing and being called a drunkard. So,
yeah.
And you see how quickly things can spread. So when you walk into a meeting, a judicial committee, and you're like, fuck you, fuck your religion, fuck your God. Like, does that travel out? Like, does everybody know that? Because like that's a heck of a way to go out,
Oh yeah, and trust me, everyone knew. And my mother-in-law told everybody what I did to get disfellowshipped, and yeah, it was great. It was just great.
Yeah, but they just push people and push people and push people, and they make them break in certain ways. That's probably not normally you to go in and do something like that, but it is in those circumstances.
Yep. And I was very, very angry and very bitter for a long time after that. So I think I was 21 when I got shunned the first time. So yeah, I think it took me like 5 years to not be bitter and angry anymore.
Now, you said you were shunned the first time at 21, so you were shunned again later?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. So where
you thought the story was over? Wow.
Dun, dun, dun. There's more.
So 5 years of being shunned, and I just want to say that my family was really strict, like we kind of touched on earlier. So when my family shuns somebody, they shun them all the way.
Oh yeah.
My aunt, she's like the type where if you found out you were being reinstated that Tuesday, if you called her before Tuesday, she would tell you, don't you dare talk to me until the announcement is made. So they're like very, very strict. They don't answer your phone calls. They don't speak to you. They don't eat in your presence. So 5 years of no contact with my parents. I think like maybe a couple of times my car broke down and I was desperate. So I'd reach out to my dad and he'd answer me then. But for the most part, 5 years, no contact. I had my son. He was, I don't know, I guess he was about a year whenever I got shunned the first time. So he was about a year old. For 5 years, they didn't see their grandson because they're like, well, until you get reinstated as a Jehovah's Witness, he's just going to die. So why would we want to get to know your son who's just going to die?
Yep.
So, 5 years, and I was again angry. I'm still angry at that they would treat my kids that way because they never did anything. I mean, for that matter, I don't feel like I really did anything bad either, but Yeah, so while I was out the first time, I went crazy. I did all the things I thought worldly people were supposed to do. So I got in contact with some people that were also shunned. We became buddies, hung out all the time because we grew up in the same way, and we were being shunned the same way. So we all hung out, and then I made them all enemies just as quickly because I was such a horrible person. It was like I went from being the best goody two shoe girl I could possibly be as a Jehovah's Witness to being evil and just horrible. I don't know.
What is that? What does evil and horrible mean?
Um, you know, sleeping with as many people as possible, and including my best friend's boyfriend, which was definitely probably the worst thing I did while I was shunned.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure she probably would still hate me if she ever saw me to this day, which is totally fine. I got called many mean names from her, which is again understandable. Um,
And do you feel like you were doing that, acting like that, because you were just kind of acting out, or do you feel like you kind of thought that's who you were supposed to be because your whole life you had been told that everyone on the outside was, like you said earlier, a slut or promiscuous or whatever? Like, did you feel like you had to be that in order to fit in, or was that just kind of you just letting go and giving up for a while?
I think I feel like it's probably a mixture of the two.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly do think that's what I was, that's what I thought people were. So I thought that that's how I was going to have to act for people to like me. But I was like, at the same time, I don't know how anybody could like me. But I think that part of me just kind of said, screw it, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want because, I didn't have a childhood, and I didn't get to have my normal teenage years and be crazy and wild like I feel like other people get to experience. So I was like, I'm just going to do whatever the hell I want.
I mean, it definitely makes sense. I can see why somebody would go that way. I mean, many people react to different ways, but yeah, that totally makes sense. So, how do you? I guess you said you didn't stay there. So, how did you pull yourself out of that?
So I guess I felt I got tired of feeling like shit about myself, so I stopped acting that way. I don't really know how or whatever I did that, but um, I joined a rock band, so I was doing that for a few years, and that helped a lot because I got to write some songs and get some feelings out. So that was great. So after joining the band and everything, I was like, I finally decided I missed my family. So I was like, well, I'm going to try to get reinstated, and I lived in Louisville,
Mm-hmm.
had my own little apartment, and I had my son and everything, and so I started going to this Kingdom Hall. I found out where the closest Kingdom Hall was to my house. I lived like in Old Louisville, in this cute little apartment near U of L campus, which is pretty nice area, I think.
Yeah.
But so the closest Kingdom Hall was what I would like to consider the ghetto. So I didn't have a car at the time, so I decided to take the bus to the Kingdom Hall, and I had to walk probably about a quarter of a mile in this really, really, really shady neighborhood. Um, and I did that for like 6 months, and I studied all the publications that they had and wrote down every single scripture was in every paragraph, and um, tried really, really hard to do way better than I ever did before, and tried to really take it all in, And the elders there at that Kingdom Hall said, "Hey, I think you're ready to be reinstated." And I was like, "Yes, my hard work has paid off."
Yeah.
But then they're like, "Well, but the thing is, you have to get reinstated by the elders that disfellowshipped you in the
Oh,
first
that's
place."
right.
Yeah, and I was like,
Yeah.
great. So these people that have not been seeing me this whole time, I've been trying really hard, and the people that I basically told "fuck you" to
Hmm.
are going to be the ones that have to make this decision for me. And I was like, that's just perfect. So we went and saw them, and I had to take a bus again because I didn't have a car. Took a bus all the way to the Kingdom Hall where I was disfellowshipped at originally, which was really far away. I think the bus ride was about an hour and a
Yeah, I
half.
was gonna say that's got. I mean, just knowing in general where you're from, that's a long, long bus ride.
Yeah, and I got there late, so they probably thought that I wasn't, serious about it.
Hmm.
But I got there and they talked to me for all of 5 minutes and said, "Well, wait outside the door and we're going to discuss this and bring you back in." And I went back in there and, again, they hadn't asked me any questions about anything, how I'd been doing the last 6 months when I'd been trying. They didn't ask me any questions. They just kind of, whatever. And yeah, they pulled me back in the room and said, "We don't think you're ready. You need to try harder." So I was like, okay. And I basically said, "fuck you guys" again. And I walked out and I stopped going to the Kingdom Hall again for a while. And then I decided, like, I think it was about a year later after that, I said, "I'm going to try again."
Hmm.
So I was like, well, the only way I can figure that I can get reinstated is if I don't have any temptations. So I was like, great idea. Let's get married again. That way I won't have any reason not to be reinstated. So I got married again to a worldly guy, and that worked out really great. Notice the sarcasm. Um, I think I went to the Kingdom Hall over here in Jeffersonville, where I live now, for about 6 months, and they, I wrote a letter saying I wanted to get back, and so they read my letter and everything, and sent me over to Fern Creek where I'd originally got disfellowshipped at, and said, if they say you're ready, you can be reinstated. And I was like, great, I have to talk to them again. Um, but they this time they said yeah. So
They just didn't
uh,
want to get yelled at again.
yeah, I guess so. Oh, but yeah, they reinstated me that time. So I think it was a total of 5 years between getting shunned the first time and getting reinstated.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, but then about, I don't know. Oh, at this point, whenever I was getting reinstated, I was also pregnant with my second child, my daughter.
Hmm.
And whenever I got reinstated, my then husband, I don't know, he thought I had changed a lot since I got reinstated, and he didn't seem to like me anymore. So he's like, 2 months after I had my daughter, he's like, "Yeah, I'm not happy. I don't want to be with you anymore." And he left. So I was like, great, I'm reinstated and alone again because my husband just left me.
Wow. That's
The
and,
2 month old.
and again, you said it's 2 months later. Like again, it seems like for you, a lot of these things that happen, it's like so fast. Like you as soon as you think you've got something stable or you got there again, the rug gets pulled out from under you, um, by these people. So where do you, how do you now react? You got did you say your daughter was born or on the way?
She was 2 months old
2 months
whenever
old.
he,
There you go.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's right. And then he left. So where do you go from there? And are you getting support from the congregation?
So at this point, my parents had been looking for a new house. They sold their one in Mount Washington, where I grew up at, and they bought one actually 2 minutes from my house here in Jeffersonville. So they moved to Jeffersonville um, whenever I got reinstated. So I had my parents, and that was pretty nice, except for they'd forgotten how needy I can be. so so they were like right across the street, basically, with a stoplight. They were only 2 minutes away, and so I wanted to hang out with them every day. And I was again, I deal with depression, so I got really, really, really bad off whenever my husband left. And I didn't have a job at that point because he was like, you can stay at home with the kids, and I'm going to take care of you, and everything's going to be great. And like right after I quit my job, I had my daughter, and he's like, "Okay, well, bye. I'm out. Peace."
Wow.
So yeah, I like rushed to get a job, and Um, I found one really, really quickly, but still, you have to find one that's okay to go to the meetings. You can't be interfering with meeting time, and you got to make sure you're out in service all the time. So it was a crappy job. It was part time, and I have a house I have to pay for. So I was like really struggling, um, and I was really sad and depressed. And so I was like, mom, I was like, call her up. Hey, mom, what you doing today? Let's hang out. Like every single day, every minute of the day, I wanted to be at their house hanging out. Otherwise, I got lost in my thoughts, and I was really sad, and I was being suicidal again. Um, and finally, when it got to the point where I was calling so often, I was like, "Hey, mom, what are we having for dinner tonight?" And she's like, "You're not coming over tonight." I was like, "What?" And she's like, "No, stay at home. Do something at home tonight. We're busy." I was like, "Oh, well, okay, cool." And then that happened, every day for a while, and I was like, "Great, they don't want to be around me anymore, and I've only been reinstated for like 6 months, and they already hate me. Like this is great." And I don't remember where I was going after that. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So yeah, so your parents are now. Well, first of all, I was going to ask. I mean, or at least say that you. I mean, you could have had some postpartum depression too. On top of everything else. Uh, I mean, I don't know, but just going right after that, and then your husband leaving, and you're naturally a person who has dealt with depression anyway. I mean, my goodness, you needed some help, and it seems like you just kept through all this stuff, in your story, you just keep pushing through. Um, which you're obviously a strong person who can keep going, but at the same time, you're not getting your needs met in a lot of important ways, and yet you're still strong enough at least to keep pushing. So here you are now. You're obviously reaching out again. Now you're reaching to your parents, being like you said, quote, needy, because here you are again alone as your husband has left, and you've got this child, and you're trying to earn a living and eat. So your parents start pushing you away, getting a little distance there. So where do things go from there? How does it drive you? Does it drive you to push harder in some way, or does it drive you, further into depression?
I definitely got really, really bad into the depression. I I got taken to a hospital. Like I know you probably know where it is. It's called Wellstone in Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, I actually went to the doctor first, and I was like, I need some sort of medication because I was like, I'm so depressed. I'm suicidal again. I need something to help me because I can't live like this anymore. And instead of being like, sure, we can help you out, she said, did you say you're suicidal? Well, we're going to have to get the police involved, and we're going to have to get your kids somewhere safe because blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you're threatening to take my kids from me now? So instead of helping, they said, oh, let's threaten to take her kids away because she's depressed. So that like sent me over the edge too. And she said that what I would have to do in order to keep my kids was to go to Wellstone. So I was like, okay, I'll go to Wellstone and get like an evaluation or whatever. And I'm the type of person where, um, growing up, it's not okay to show emotion, and it's not okay to cry, and fake it till you make it. That was my mom's favorite saying: fake it until you make it. Nobody cares about your feelings. Nobody cares. If you tell your friends, if you make friends and you tell them about how you're depressed, well, guess what? They're not going to be your friends for very long. So make sure you don't tell them anything. So going to this evaluation, I was like, oh, haha, I'm fine. Yeah, I just thought about killing myself. No big deal. And I don't really need to be here. And so of course they were like, she's fine. She doesn't need us. She's fine. Don't worry. And I was like, okay, great. So I am not getting help. This is awesome. And So yeah, it was pretty bad. I think that they eventually actually put me on medication, but it took a really long while. And yeah, so yeah, all this definitely made me a lot worse off. Um, I think I ended up losing like 70 pounds from not eating, and I anytime I was at home, I was crying all day, and I couldn't barely take care of my kids because I was crying too much, and it was really miserable. And I thought that being reinstated again, that I would feel better
Mhm.
and I'd have my family back, and all I felt was more empty and like and I feel like every time I was around people at the Kingdom Hall, it's like all they saw was the recently reinstated girl. Like she did something bad before that made her be shunned. So we shouldn't get too close to her because she's probably still bad.
Oh yeah, there's a huge
It was like I was
stigma.
marked.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and not only were you recently shunned, but and reinstated, but your husband was gone, and so they're probably, and you were married to a worldly guy anyway,
Oh
so
yeah, there's that.
there's that stigma too. So yeah, you in a very judgmental society, you have a lot of strikes against you.
hmm
So how does this play out where you how do you get out of this vortex that you seem to be caught up in?
Um, so, and again, it happened really fast. This next little part. So my parents were, they were, no, you can stay at home today. We're too busy. And then all of a sudden, they left the state and they were gone for a month. And I think they went to Arizona for work or something.
Mhm.
And my dad's an elder now, by the way. So I don't know. Like they go to Arizona, and I'm like by myself every moment of every day all of a sudden, and I was like freaking out. So again, being all depressed and everything, and I had like a friend in the Kingdom Hall who happened to be an elder's wife. And I got to the point where I was begging her, wanting to hang out with her every day. And she was seeming like she was kind of irritated, didn't want me around all the time too. So I was like, I'm going to leave them alone. Uh, right at the same time, my husband, who had left, my ex-husband, he had left whenever my daughter was 2 months old. He
Mhm.
was trying to get back in contact, and he's like, I miss you, and I want to be back together with you. And I was like, I don't really know how I feel about that because he's a kind of a jerk, whatever. Because he left with me with a 2-month-old daughter.
Yeah, he kind of exhibited some of that already. It's
Yeah,
hard to
so I was
ignore.
like, I don't know, but I was like, I'm really lonely, and maybe I'll give it a try. But I was still kind of on the fence about it. Well, then my ex-husband's friend, he reached out to me, or I think I actually reached out to him somehow. Like he needed an apartment, so I was like, hey, I saw an apartment for rent or whatever. And anyway, he reached out to me after that, and he's like, hey, so your ex, he's really trying here, and I think you should give him another chance. And we started talking, me and my ex-husband's friend,
Mhm.
and we started talking like every day, all day, and you know how that goes. so uh, so instead of talking me into giving my ex a try again, it turned into me falling for my ex-husband's friend. And long story short, we're married now. But I think like that 1 month that my parents were gone in Arizona was me talking to him every day, and he honestly, like, without a doubt, saved my life, because if it wasn't for him, I think that, like, I don't think I would be here today. And but yeah, that 1 month period from my parents being gone, like leaving to coming back, me and this guy, his name's Noli, we've been talking every day and everything, and so people saw us together, and got back to the elders. You know how that goes.
Oh yeah.
So the elders pulled me in for a judicial meeting, and they're like, is there anything you want to tell us? I was like, I don't know. What are you talking about? I was like, I guess there is this one little thing that, I've been dating this worldly guy and, we may or may not have slept together, well, and they're like, well, you need to stop seeing him or else we're going to disfellowship you. And I was like, well, I'm not going to stop seeing him. And that's that. And they're like, well, then we have no other choice but to disfellowship you. And they were asking me if there was anything else I had done. And I was like, no, I haven't done anything. Like, what else do you think I've been doing? Like, I just now told you the worst thing that I've done recently. Like,
Yeah.
and they called me a liar. And I was like, why are you calling me a liar? Like, I just now told you everything I did, and why are you calling me a liar right now? And I ended up like crying and stuff because I'm not a liar, and I don't like being called a liar.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, I couldn't until this day. I still don't understand why they think I was lying to them. But
Some
this
wild rumor.
yeah, and they told me they're like, okay, well, we were gonna have to disfellowship you, and I was like, okay, I understand. I was like, I think this is crazy, but okay. And unlike the first time, whenever I was like, fuck you and fuck your religion, this time I was like, I felt really sad because I was like, I didn't think I did anything wrong because he was worldly, but he was, he saved my life and he really cared a lot about me. And I was happier than I'd ever been before. And I was like, I don't understand how this is bad. But they told me I was going to be disfellowshipped that coming Tuesday. And I was like, okay. And I went straight to my parents' house and I said, there's something I need to tell you guys. And they're like, okay. Because, they'd gotten back from Arizona at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, what's going on? And they were like all smiles and stuff. And I told them, I was like, I'm getting disfellowshipped again. And the look of my mom and dad's face, they're like, their smiles just dropped off of their faces. And they were like, what do you mean you're getting disfellowshipped? And they just couldn't believe it because as far as they were concerned, I was doing perfectly fine. And, looking back, I realized like, I don't think that they realized that I was depressed. And I don't know, maybe I got so good at hiding my feelings or something. Cause, like I
Mm-hmm.
said, don't tell anybody your feelings because they'll hate you and they'll think you're horrible. And
Yeah. Fake it till you make it.
they had no idea apparently that I was like depressed and stuff. And they were in denial. Even though I went to Wellstone, they still were in denial that like, oh,
Well,
she's
yeah, that's
fine.
a pretty big. You went to Wellston. That's a pretty big. That should tip them off. Um, to me, I think it's more just they don't see you very well.
Yeah.
It sounds like they struggle with seeing other people, and I mean, at least from what you said of your mom, she clearly does. I don't know about your dad, but sounds like they just they saw what they wanted to see, but they didn't see what the reality was, maybe necessarily.
Yeah.
Which is how a lot of people stay where they are in the religion. So what was their reaction to that? I mean, I assume it was just, matter of fact, and here we go again, right?
Yeah, it was well, first of all, like, what the hell do you mean? And well, no H word, but
Yeah.
they were very, very proper. But anyway, they're like, what do you mean? You can't be serious. I was like, yeah, I'm serious. I'm sorry. And I was crying and they told me that, gosh, I got a text after I left their house. I got a text from my dad saying, basically, I hope that your mom's cancer doesn't come back, and I hope she doesn't die because of all the stress that you've put on her. And if she does die, it'll all be your fault. And, you're such a selfish person, and I can't believe how selfish you could possibly be. This is just insane. And just, through all the shaming and, guilt at me.
Yeah, that's for people who are pariahs in their own congregation, they are doing a great job of making you one among them with statements like, if your mom's cancer comes back, it's on you. That's
Yep.
that's as unfair a statement as it gets, and it's frankly just very mean. It's just it's a very mean thing to do to somebody.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you do with that? Where do things go from there?
So from there, I left their house in tears, of course,
Sure.
and drove over to my then boyfriend's house. So that's Noli. He was actually in from Chicago, so I drove over there crying. Like, first of all, we'd only been dating for a couple of weeks or a month or whatever, and so, um, really great thing for him to see is like a hysterical, crying, sobbing mess with like snot running down her face. It wasn't a pretty sight, but he was there for me, and he's helped me through just like I said, he's the reason I'm alive today, for like no doubt. And yeah, I they announced it at the Kingdom Hall that Tuesday. My mom like came and gave me a hug right before they announced it, and then after that, they just, you know, I don't exist anymore.
And how long has that been?
It's been about 3.5 years now.
And during those 3.5 years, I mean, first of all, I know you got married to Noli because you already said, and I was at the wedding.
Yes, you were.
And so obviously, that relationship is still going strong, and that's a beautiful thing. Um, so you haven't heard anything then from your parents in 3.5 years?
So I've heard from them a few times. Like I said, they live like 2 minutes away still. Um,
Oh, they still live
they,
2 minutes away from you?
yeah, they're right across 10th Street,
Oh, I
and
always thought they
just
moved. I don't know where I got that from.
no, they're apparently they're about to move, but I'll get to that part here in a
Oh,
second.
okay.
So I remember that right after I got this fellowship, and this time they were just like super no contact whatsoever. They didn't want to see the kids again, and but then whenever Noli and I got married, I sent them an invitation to the wedding, and I don't know why I was expecting some sort of response to that, but I had it in my mind that they might show up to the wedding, and I don't know, I didn't really think that they would, but it was still turns out it was a really big hope of mine that they would, come, and
Hope springs eternal.
uh, yeah. But of course they didn't show up, and um, I got a little booze in me that night after the wedding, and I was blubbering all over my maid of honor, talking about how my parents didn't come to the wedding, and that was really fun. Um, but yeah, they didn't show up. But all of a sudden, after I think it was like a couple weeks or a month later, they invited, like, they wanted to come see the kids or something, and they brought on gift cards for like Visa's gift cards or something with money, and I was like, what do you, this has been like 2 years, and all of a sudden you all want to come bring them money? Like, that's gonna do anything? I mean, sure, go ahead and give them the money. It's it's money, it's useful, but
Mhm.
I was like, this is so weird. Why would you do that? And it turns out they thought that since I was married now, that I might try to come back to the Kingdom Hall.
Oh.
But yeah, so that's why they were like trying to be all sweet, and you know I don't know, but I they invited the kids over to their house, and I was like, yeah, why not? I'll let them hang out with with their grandparents. And my daughter had never really even met them, which is funny because she was like, who are these strange older people that were at their house? But but while I was there dropping them off, apparently they had invited over another elder and his wife, knowing that I was bringing the kids by. So I think it was intentional. And the elder was like, "Hey, Cass, let's step outside real quick. I want to talk to you." And I was like, "Okay, I don't know why. I don't have anything to say to you, but okay." And we went outside on the back porch, and he's like, just want to let you know that the door is still open. You can always come back if you want to. And I was like, "No, thank you. I really want absolutely nothing to do with your religion anymore." And he was like, I think he was kind of shocked by that. And I was like, no, I literally, no thanks. And I was still kind of bitter at that point too. I was like, but I didn't tell him to fuck off, so that's a plus, right?
Right.
But yeah, I was like, no thanks, and no, I don't really. He's like, well, it's still always open. I was like, no, I'm literally never ever coming back to your religion ever, and made it quite clear. And after that, my parents like didn't try to reach out again for a really long time, and um, I think I tried to reach out to them whenever I had to take my husband to the hospital, or somebody I had to take somebody to the hospital, and I was like, "Can you all please pick up the kids from daycare because I really need to be at the hospital?" They never responded, so they didn't really, help. But I think the next time I spoke to them after the wedding was, or after I got married rather, my dad sent me a message saying, "Hey, your mom's in the hospital. She just had a surgery. She's okay. Um, apparently she had like a really big tumor or something that they had to remove." But I was like, "Well, where is she? I'm gonna go see her." And I showed up at the hospital, and my mom was on the phone like with my brother, and he lives in Arizona. And by the way, he's the only one of my siblings and I that are still in the religion.
Hmm.
So he lives in Arizona, and he's like, they're talking on the phone, and my mom was like, "Oh, hold on, Rob, I've got a visitor, so I got to get off of here." And I was like, damn, I'm just a visitor now. I'm not even your daughter. I'm not even my brother's sister. I'm just some random visitor that's coming to see you in the hospital. And that really pissed me off. And I felt like I didn't know her anymore. And she just like was acting all awkward, and I was being all awkward. Um, so I only stayed for like 5 minutes. I was like, okay, well, yep, I'm out. See you later. Hope you feel better, Mom. Um, Yeah. I think since then though, that goes to the them moving thing. Sorry. I got a random message from them. I guess about a month ago now,
Hmm.
and she's like, "Hey, just wanted to let you know that we're moving. We're selling our house and we're moving to Arizona. So we wanted to see the kids and tell them goodbye. But if you don't want us to, then I totally understand." So I sent a really nice long message to my mom in response, and it took me like an hour to write it. And I was like, now why would I not want you to see the kids, Mom? Maybe it's because, and I like went off in this long rant about how crazy things have been, and how mad I am. And at the very end of it, I said, "Oh, to answer your question, fuck no, you cannot see the kids."
Yeah, they let us see the kids one last time before we shun them again. I mean, I feel for the kids as well, because they're getting dragged through all this. You know, it's not fair for your parents to be like, yeah, you can be in our lives. We want you in our lives. Nah, we don't want you in our lives. Or, we want to try to get you over here, or bribe you in some way so we can ambush your mom with an elder. That's not fair.
Yep. Yeah, and I think in my message I told her that, my kids are brilliant and they deserve way more love and affection than they can obviously offer. So I was like, no, I don't want you to ever see them. So yeah, I didn't see them again after that. I think we had a couple of messages back and forth where she was like, "Oh, I had no idea you felt this way, and why do you not think we love you? Of course we love you," and blah blah blah. I was like, bullshit. Like how could you think that? I don't know. They're oblivious. I think it's the religion, I guess. I don't know.
It's probably a mixture of things, religion, and some of their own personality traits that maybe were even some of their own personality traits they naturally have, and then a lot of things I think are formed, like you said, by the religion. So it's unfortunate, and so now they are not moving, or they haven't moved yet, but they are still considering moving. Um, how does how does that make you feel if they just move away, or are you just kind of done?
I'm just done.
Okay.
They've in my mind they've made it clear that we don't mean enough, and I'm fine with that because my husband and I we're gonna be like the new foundation and the rock for our future family, and you know we're gonna have our kids are gonna have kids, we're gonna have our grandkids eventually, and we're gonna have Christmases and Thanksgivings together, and we're gonna be that foundation, that glue that brings everybody together, and we're gonna have we're gonna try to make it a happy family and give them the love and appreciation and affection that we didn't get.
That's
So
beautiful. So, what do you let me ask you first, what are some things, because there's been a lot of personal growth obviously through this process. Um what are some things you've learned, or what are some resources that have helped you as you've had to, take stands and maybe wake up to some of the realities? What are some things that have helped you, and what have you learned?
well, I have to say, whenever I first got shunned this time, I was, really down in the dumps. But a friend of mine, she's actually my ex sister in law. I think she grew up in the same kingdom hall as you, and she had like this little tiny Facebook group, and I think it was called like "Chuck It in the Fuck It Bucket" is what she called it,
Oh,
and it
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, I know.
was so. She was like, "Well, I have this little group, and I want to invite you to it because we were being friends again." And she's like, "I want to invite you, but it's only if you're ready." And I was like, "Yeah, I think I am." And I joined that little group, and it was just a group full of people just like me. I think that's how I met you and Jenny.
Mhm.
And just being around people that have been through stuff, and then I hung out with Jenny that one time over like I think it was Christmas, my very first Christmas ever,
Mhm.
and I don't know, it's just nice to see that even after being shunned, you can still have a life, and it doesn't have to be all about them. And I don't know. I'm not really big into like the podcast world or the
Mhm.
reading, so I've definitely listened to this JW Life and some of the podcast interviews on yours as well. But as far as like other outside like people I don't know podcasts or whatever, I'm not really into that.
Mhm.
I'm not really into the reading books and stuff, but just being around people that understand and can help me through that, and like we can help each other, that's been just amazing for me. And yeah, that's and then of course therapy.
Yeah.
Therapy's been very, very helpful.
That's awesome. Has there been anything, maybe even in therapy, has there been anything that you've learned in particular? Like um, got a word of wisdom that you'd like to offer about, boundaries, or just, I don't know, anything that you've learned that you think has helped you to maybe change your perspective on something, or, through seeing things in another way, maybe come to some acceptance?
Oh gosh, I literally like as far as therapy goes, I learn something new basically every session, and I don't really know if I have any words of wisdom, but I didn't really think about that. um,
Yeah.
hmm, I don't know. Just for me, it's the not giving in to the guilt trips that they try to throw at you, because I don't know. I am way happier now in my life than I ever was as a Jehovah's Witness, and there's no way in hell I would ever go back to them because it's just I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's not a lot there for you, obviously. Certainly not making you happy. So, speaking of happiness, what makes you happy in your new life, that you have now? What are the things that you're happy about today?
Oh gosh. So here's one. I worked the same job for 14 years, and it was at a Chinese restaurant, which is like a teenager job, right? In the food industry. And that's kind of like what witnesses do. They want you to go in a nowhere job and make nothing of yourself. But
Hmm.
now that I've been out, as they say, I have a grown up job and I love it. And I feel like I'm making something of myself and I'm actually having, um, I don't know, love of myself. Like I have self love now because
Good.
I know now that I'm worth something and I can make more of myself. I don't have to just be at the bottom and, you know, barely get by or whatever. I can have my own life and I can be happy. And I don't know, the having a job that's not a teenager job really has brought me a lot of joy, and having a husband who isn't all about the spiritual things as what they worry about with witnesses. It's really nice having a husband that treats me like an equal person, like I'm not something less than, and like my feelings matter. Um, and just I don't know, just not having to go to the Kingdom Hall 3 times a week. That's really nice too. Makes me happy.
Yeah, think of all the time that we save by not having to go to those meetings.
And yet we're always like so busy,
Yes.
so extra busy.
Yeah. So busy, never any time for fun. Um, so what dreams do you have? You talked about a little bit about being that, I guess that rock or that nucleus of a new family that springs from yourself and Chris and your kids and their kids eventually and everything. But do you have any dreams for you and Noli? Anything that you're wanting to make out of life?
We have a goal of traveling the world, which I guess kind of sounds cliche, but we've already started. We witness life where it's all about simple.
Mm-hmm.
So, have a tiny house and don't have a good job so that you only have enough to pay your bills and go out and service. But now it's we save for so we can go out of the country. We've got ourselves passports and we've already been to Europe and France and we've been to Thailand. And, our goal right now is to go to every continent first, and then we'll just travel wherever we want. But we have to go, like, our goal is to go somewhere new every year. And so, yeah, while we're raising our little family and becoming the glue for future, until then, we're going to be traveling the world and just enjoying our best life ever.
I love that. Yeah, that's no, I think that's beautiful. I really appreciate you sharing your story. I know that it's not always easy to do, and I know that it's I know a few times you said TMI, but I appreciate you being frank about things and honest and open, and I think that's good. That's how we heal, is by being open about things. If people that we had grown up with, if just everybody around us, even in the organization, would have been open about things, we would have felt so much less alone. Of course, probably wouldn't be many Jehovah's Witnesses left as people were open about
Right.
things and we all started talking about our doubts and left. But ultimately, openness is what helps people, and I'm sure your story will help somebody out there. As always, I want to thank everybody that's brave enough to get on here and tell their story, so that they can help those that listen. And I hope that in listening back to it, you get a different perspective and can give a little more weight to what you experienced and find some more healing. If you're listening, you can support today's guest by leaving a comment of support on the website at shunnedpodcast.com on the episodes page. While there, you can find the date for the next Shunned Recovery Project online meetup, reach out for one-on-one coaching to get moving on your new life, or buy some merch and rep the show. Visit my other site, xjwhelp.com, for helpful videos and a downloadable roadmap of life after leaving, as well as resources like meetups, books, and a lot more. Join the Facebook support group called Shun Podcast. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and more as Shun Podcast. Leave a review on iTunes or other podcast apps for both this and the original podcast, This JW Life, so that more people can find these stories and get the help that they need. Donating equals loving. So if you love these stories and find them helpful, please support the show at patreon.com/shunned. And there's some rewards there, and it really means a lot to me to see that people support what I'm doing, and it helps me to do more. The theme song for today is No Hell Yet by Fair Voyeur. And as I end all episodes, love others, do no harm, and go be happy.
We'll curse God